Okay, so happy almost Sukkot, everybody. And I want and wanted to talk about the holiday of Sukkot and focus on a couple of aspects of the holiday that make it unique from other holidays. So the Torah reading that serves as the basis for how we observe the holiday is found in the book of Leviticus. It serves as the basis for the Torah reading tomorrow and Wednesday mornings. Which is taken from that section which describes the sacred occasions that are celebrated throughout the year and how they are supposed to be celebrated. So there's a brief description of Yom Kippur. A more thorough description of Yom Kippur was read as the Torah reading on Yom Kippur itself. And the description of Sukkot is found here in chapter 23 of the book of Leviticus. So I'm just looking at there's a small blue book that we have in shul just on the bima for the Torah readers. It's a book that has all just the holiday Torah readings and haftarahs in it. So in this one, it says in chapter 23, beginning with verse, just a second, with verse 33 or 34, 15th of the day of the 7th month is a feast of tabernacles, Chag Sukkot, for 7 days unto the Lord. So two things there. So the Sukkah that we build on the holiday of Sukkot and 7 days. So two things just need comment there. So the Sukkah. So I see right behind Margie and Steve there. You can see there's their sukkah right there. See the lighting changed, so we can see their sukkah that's on their porch right behind them. Okay, so there the sukkah is this booth. The Torah doesn't tell us how to build it, doesn't tell us what to use to make it, doesn't tell us what shape to make it. It just says that we dwell in booths to remember how the Israelites dwelled in these booths, these Sukkot, during their wandering in the desert. Okay, so there's a historical significance to the Sukkah that we build every year to remember our ancestors wandering in the desert. And then, as with every holiday, there's historical significance and agricultural significance too. The idea is that this is the fall harvest festival to celebrate the fall harvest in the land of Israel, and that the farmers would stay out in the field for having harvested as much as possible, as quickly as possible, so that the rains don't come and ruin all the produce. So they would build booths out in the fields and sleep there in the field instead of schlepping back home, however far home was from the field that they owned. So the booth then has this connection to our history of 3,000 years ago wandering in the desert, and also the agricultural connection to the land of Israel. Lots of things that we do on the holidays connect to the land of Israel. The end of Sukkot, the next day is Shmini Atzeret, and we pray for rain on that day. It's not that we need rain necessarily here in America, but we know that the rainy season comes around this time in Israel, and we are connecting to Israel itself. So the holidays have all these connections to them to ensure that we stay connected, kind of like we're to make sure that we're Zionist in our observance of the holiday. So build a sukkah. How do we build a sukkah? So then we need the rabbis to answer that question for us. And in the tractate Sukkah, the tractate Sukkah describes everything about the holiday of Sukkot, including how to build a sukkah. So the features of the Sukkah are that they need to have at least 2.5 walls. 2.5 walls are the minimum to ensure that the structure can stand on its own. It can't be dependent on another structure. Another structure can be used for a wall of the sukkah as long as the sukkah has 2.5 of its own walls, right? So just using your sukkah, Margie and Steve, as an example, let's say the wall of your house counts as a wall of the sukkah. That's fine because you have 3 other walls of your sukkah to make it kosher. So you have a half a wall extra to make sure that your sukkah is kosher. Then there's a minimum height for the wall of the sukkah. Each wall has to be from the ground up at least 10 handbreadths high. So the question is a handbreadth like this or is a handbreadth like this? So a colleague of mine in New Jersey posted on Facebook how to make sure your sukkah is COVID friendly. He said the wall has to be 10 handbreadths high, which he says is 35 inches, so 3 feet. As long as the wall is 3 feet off the ground, it's clear that it's a wall and that it counts as the wall of the sukkah. So you can have empty space above that if you'd like, and that's okay. That lets more air into the sukkah. Then what you use to attach these walls to each other doesn't matter. I use pipes. I see you guys have some kind of pipes or wood back there, whatever it is. Doesn't matter what you use to make the wall. Any material for the wall is perfectly acceptable, whether it's natural, unnatural, man-made, not man-made, whatever it is, doesn't matter for the wall, as long as it's at least 3 feet high off the ground. It's the roof of the sukkah that matters the most, and the roof of the sukkah has to be natural, right? You can't use artificial products for the ceiling of the sukkah or the roof of the sukkah, which is called the schach. The schach is the roof of the sukkah. The Torah doesn't mention anything about any of this at all. Just says, Basukot teshvu shivat yamim. In a sukkah, you should dwell for 7 days. Okay, so the roof of the sukkah that has to be natural products. So a lot of people use bamboo mats for their sukkah, or just bamboo poles, and it has to be enough of a roof that the inside the sukkah is more shade than sun. Okay, so that when you're standing in the sukkah, it's clearly that there's shade in there and not sun. So if the spacing of the roof of the sukkah, of the schach, is such that it lets in more sun than it blocks, then it's not quite good enough. You need to have more. The other thing is that a sukkah cannot be built under a tree. So you can't use branches of a tree to be the schach of the sukkah. The sukkah has to be standing independently with its own roof, not under a tree. So another colleague of mine posted on Facebook, she just started a job in Princeton. So my parents know her because she used to be in Philadelphia. She used to be their rabbi. And she moved to Princeton. Sukkah was built. Sukkah was built under a tree in the parking lot of that synagogue, and they had to scramble to move the sukkah after it was built from under the tree to open sky. So the sukkah has to be independent, standing independent, and with walls that are at least 3 feet high, and that the roof has to be all natural product. Okay. The height of the sukkah can't be more than 20 cubits. Because then it's like a huge building and it doesn't count as a booth anymore. So it has to be less than 20 cubits. 20 cubits would be 30 feet. So it's kind of hard to build a 30-foot high sukkah anyway. So yes, that high it can't be. There's discussion in the Mishnah as to where you can build the sukkah. Can you build the sukkah on a boat? Can you build it on a camel's back? And the answer is yes to both of those. And so if you're in New York City during the holiday of Sukkot, you can see Chabad rabbis with a sukkah attached to their motorcycle driving around town to give people the opportunity to dwell in a sukkah. The Mishnah also describes the minimum size of the sukkah, so at least your head and half your body can fit in it. So it doesn't have to be big enough for 2 people or 4 people or even one whole person. It just has to be big enough for a head and half the body of a person to fit in the sukkah. That sounds like a ridiculous kind of argument and statement. Who builds a sukkah that small? But my daughter, who lives in Westchester, has a very small balcony, and that was they built a sukkah on her balcony, and there's enough room, she says, there for 4 adults to fit on this very tight space balcony. So the other thing about the sukkah, so that's the material of the sukkah and how it's built and all that, and there is another point to the sukkah as well that the rabbis say. Only those who are obligated to fulfill the mitzvah of the sukkah are obligated to be in the sukkah. So in pre-egalitarian days, that would mean that the sukkah, the mitzvah of dwelling in the sukkah, is a time-bound commandment, right? As opposed to keeping kosher, where there's no particular time to do that. You do that all the time. The commandment of building the sukkah is unique to the holiday of Sukkot. So therefore, it's a time-bound commandment. So traditionally, only men are commanded or obligated to fulfill time-bound commandments. Women are not. So within the Orthodox world or the ultra-Orthodox world, you'll find only men sitting in a sukkah and women not, so that unless there happens to be enough room. But if there isn't enough room, I remember a long time ago visiting, I don't know, must have been somebody in Lenore's family or friend of the family who were Orthodox, and the sukkah was built on the balcony of their apartment, and it didn't seem like there was enough room for everybody in the family. And I said, oh, only the men are going to be sitting in the sukkah. Don't worry, there's enough room for everybody. So it's just kind of strange to me in an egalitarian age that you'd be building a sukkah only for enough room for men to fit in it. But that's not the case in egalitarian circles, making sure there's enough room for everybody to fit in comfortably under the schach. Okay, so that's the Sukkah. Now it says for 7 days. So that's the whole discussion about why Sukkot is 8 days, but 7 days in Israel. And that's just to remember the time, how holidays or even the new moon was determined, right? The witnesses had to come to Jerusalem to testify that they saw the new moon, and their testimony would be authorized. And then the word would get out to the community that this is the new moon today. And that means that 14 days from now, the 15th of the month, would be the holiday of Sukkot. So it took time for the message to get outside of Israel, and there would be confusion as to which day is the holiday. And so to be sure, we have outside of Israel, there are 2 days of the holiday at the beginning, not 1, and 2 days of the holiday at the end. So that makes it 2 days of Yom Tov, as it's called at the beginning, 2 days of Yom Tov at the end, and 4 days of intermediate days of the holiday in the middle, which are a semi-holiday, but they are a work day. I'm going to put this on pause. I have to take this call. Okay, so we had a lulav and etrog crisis here at the shul. Crisis averted. I don't know. It's no worries. We had more people who thought they ordered than we had ordered. So all taken care of. Okay, so lulav and so intermediate days of the holiday are these the Torah also doesn't describe these days as intermediate days. It just says 7 days you should dwell in your booth and celebrate the holiday of Sukkot. It's the rabbis who said, no, the first day is going to be restrictions like Shabbat, Yom Tov, and the last day will be restrictions like Shabbat, Yom Tov. The intermediate days, people can go about their business, but there should be, like in ultra-Orthodox circles, schools are closed. People are supposed to restrict some activities and make it more festive. But technically speaking, you can do work, you can cook, you can do all the work that you would do on a weekday on these intermediate days. It's just the beginning of the holiday and the end of the holiday that have Shabbat-like restrictions. Okay, so I explained about the Sukkah, explained about 7 days versus 8 days. Now, 7 days you shall bring an offering made by fire unto the Lord. On the 8th day shall be a holy convocation unto you, and you shall bring an offering made by fire unto the Lord. It is a day of solemn assembly. Atzeret he. Next week we'll talk about the 8th day, which is a separate holiday in and of itself called Shmini Atzeret, 8th day of assembly, and the day after that, because it's a 2-day holiday, is Simchat Torah. So we'll reserve discussion about that until next week. And then it goes on. These are the appointed seasons. And then now, verse 39 in chapter 23 says the following. On the 15th day of the 7th month, when you have gathered in the fruits of the land, right? It's the harvest festival. You shall keep the feast of the Lord 7 days. On the first day shall be a solemn rest, and on the 8th day shall be a solemn rest. And you shall take you on the first day the fruit of goodly trees, branches of palm trees, and boughs of thick trees and willows of the brook, and you shall rejoice before the Lord your God 7 days. Okay. 2 of these things are clear from the Torah what they are. Willows of the brook. So I have the willow branch here still vacuum packed before I take it out to put it in the lulav. These are the willows of the brook. So these are not weeping willows. It's a different kind of willow that is used for this. The other is boughs of a thick tree. So according to the rabbis, these are myrtle branches. Okay, myrtle branches here so that you can see this. So they do grow in thick bunches in a thick tree. I haven't seen myrtle trees in wherever I have lived, but apparently they are in Israel. And yes, so it comes, the packaging comes with all this like saying where it's from and that don't worry that they're strictly kosher. The same with the willow as well, like that. Yes, Danny, you have a question. You have to unmute.
So are men the only ones that can build the sukkahs or sukkah?
No, it's I said this that it's a traditional non-egalitarian understanding of Judaism is that only men are obligated to time-bound commandments. We are egalitarian, so we say everybody's obligated in all the commandments. I was just pointing that out as an aside about how Judaism has evolved to become egalitarian. Now it says fruit of a goodly tree, pre-Eitz Hadar, and this is understood to be the etrog. Okay, so it looks like a lemon. It's bigger than a lemon, but technically it's called a citron. Now here's a couple things about the etrog, the citron, that makes this, why it's chosen. So there's midrash, there's rabbinic interpretation. Oh, and this is the palm branch, right? It says kapot temarim. So it's the palm branch as it's translated here, but it's like the top of the palm tree. There are a whole variety of palm trees in Israel. Not sure that this is a date palm. Not sure what kind of palm it is, but I know that it's from the middle of the top of the tree. And it's from a baby tree and not really like, you don't have like people climbing trees because palm trees can be very tall. So you don't have people climbing the trees to cut these down. It's more like if you kind of picture a Christmas tree farm, right? So Christmas trees grow pretty quickly. And apparently on the farms, you have those that are cut down. And then next year, the trees, you got another area of the farm where the trees are ready for the following year. And then another area of the farm where the trees will be ready for the following year. Kind of works the same way with lulav farms. So palm trees grow quickly. And so they harvest this middle branch from the palm tree, and they come in different sizes. So, and it has these things on it to kind of keep the palm branch together, because if they didn't have this, it kind of would fan out and it'd be kind of unwieldy. So now, why the etrog? Because the Torah doesn't say which fruit exactly to use. It just says fruit of a goodly tree. So why was the etrog chosen? So one reason is that the etrog maintains its beautiful aroma even while it looks like it's rotting. So if you keep your etrog well after Sukkot, a lot of people do, and actually some people stick cloves in it and use it for besamim, the spices for Havdalah. And they can use that for a very long time, because the etrog will become smaller, it'll shrivel, it'll turn brown and become almost rock hard. And so Margie's probably getting her collection of old etrogim, yes. And they still have an aroma to them. So that makes it unusual. I mean, if you take a peach or an orange and it will rot and it will be disgusting. The etrog does not do that. Take a lemon will rot and will become disgusting. A citron and etrog does not do that. So that's one thing about the etrog. There's a midrash about all four together, which I'll get to soon. And etrog, the bottom of it is the stem. This is where it's attached to the tree and where it was cut off from the tree. The top has another thing to it sometimes, which is called a pitone. If the pitone is there, then you have to be very careful with your etrog to make sure that the top of it doesn't break. Because if the top of it does break, then the etrog is no longer kosher to be used as part of the lulav and etrog on Sukkot. So now they have developed etrogim to grow without the pitone, kind of like a navel orange, to have an orange without seeds or watermelons without seeds. So they make etrogim grow now without the top pitone. So you don't have to worry if you drop it while you're shaking the lulav and etrog, that the pitone won't break, because there's no pitone there, so nothing to worry about. So a lot of people prefer to buy an etrog that does not have the pitone to it. Now, an etrog does not have to be yellow. It can be green, but it shouldn't have any bruises on it. So there are people, I mean, in Muncie and Borough Park, all these different, in Israel, different neighborhoods in Israel, that people will go with a magnifying glass to the stands where there'll be the lulav stand, and then there'll be the willow stand, and the myrtle stand, and the etrog stand. And they'll make sure that there is not one bruise on any of these things. And it can be very expensive then. And you kind of have to know what you're doing, because some bruises are okay, some bruises not okay. There could be a certain amount of bruises that would be okay, and more bruises than that, it's not okay. So I'm not a maven on all these bruises on the lulav and etrog. I trust the people that we buy the lulav and etrog from. It's a Rabbi Mendlowitz in White Oak, who does other things for a living during the year, but has a side business of selling lulavim and etrogim. So I trust him that what he sells us are kosher. So and that is the case. And they're lovely lulavim and etrogim. Now there's midrash about the lulav and etrog together as to why we shake the lulav and etrog, because the Torah doesn't say why we gather these four things together. It doesn't even say what to do for them. It just says we rejoice with these things on the holiday of Sukkot. So we put them together as the four species. They're called the Arba Minim, the four species that we use together as a bundle to shake. So I just to be easier, because I haven't taken the willow and the myrtle out, but you would hold it in your hand like this, and you shake the lulav in front, to the side, behind, to the other side, up and down. So the rabbis say, why do we shake in those directions? All four directions of the compass, up and down, to show that God is everywhere. Okay, now that kind of smacks a little bit of kind of pagan worship, taking these things to kind of worship together to God, and there is this little kind of agricultural remnant to it. I'll do Christmas again as like a Christmas tree. Why do people have Christmas trees for the holiday of Christmas if you're celebrating the birth of Jesus? What does a tree have to do with celebrating the birth of Jesus? Well, there must be something agricultural or something ancient about the practice of a Christmas tree that people have forgotten now. It's just a nice kind of way to decorate the holiday of Christmas. So in a way, this is the similar idea for Sukkot. And that if it is it definitely is the holiday that celebrates the fall harvest, what kind of agricultural products is the land of Israel known for, if not for these particular species, the date palm especially, and the willow and the myrtle and the etrog kind of highlights the agricultural element of the holiday of Sukkot. But the Midrash says there's two different Midrashim about the lulav and etrog, why we shake them. So the lulav is tall and straight like our spine. The myrtle kind of has a shape of an eye. The willow has the shape of our mouth, and the etrog kind of has a shape of our heart. So when we have spine, eye, mouth, and heart together, our whole body comes together to celebrate God and to thank God for the bounty of the harvest, or to thank God for the bounty of our lives. Now, there's another midrash about this as well. The etrog has a beautiful aroma and can be eaten. So aroma and taste. I'm sure I'm going to mess this up. The lulav, no aroma, but taste, because it's the date palm. So aroma, no aroma, but taste. The willow, no aroma, no taste. The myrtle, aroma, no taste. So you have four possibilities there. No aroma, no taste. Aroma, no taste. Taste, no aroma. And did I say aroma and taste? Yes. Okay, so you got the four possibilities. So it's compared to doing mitzvot and studying Torah. So there are those Jews who do mitzvot and study Torah all the time. There are those Jews who do mitzvot but don't study Torah. There are those Jews who study Torah but don't do mitzvot. And there are those Jews who don't study Torah and don't do mitzvot. So that we bring all Jews together when we shake the lulav and etrog too. So either we have the Midrash, we're bringing a whole body into celebrating the holiday of Sukkot, or we have this Midrash that we have all kinds of Jews coming together on the holiday of Sukkot. And Sukkot was one of the 3 pilgrimage festivals, and therefore it brought all Jews together to Jerusalem, to the temple. Everybody would come, and the holiday of Sukkot was the most joyous of all the holidays, of all the 3 pilgrimage festivals. You would think Passover would be more so, but Sukkot in the Bible is called the most joyous of all the holidays. In fact, in the book of Deuteronomy, which has a shorter list of the holidays celebrated throughout the year, there we find the commandment to rejoice on the holiday of Sukkot. You don't have the commandment to rejoice on Shavuot or to rejoice on Passover. The rejoicing is on Sukkot. Yes, Margie.
So I just want to make a comment. In the old Blue Hertz Chumash,
Yeah.
the commentary, I used to love reading this.
Yes.
It said, you should be joyful and give candy to the children and jewelry and new clothes to the women. I always pointed that out to Steve.
That's funny. Yeah, that's right.
They were
Yeah,
just
so
comment that it should be very joyful.
exactly. So that's Rabbi Hertz over 100 years ago in his commentary, how to be joyful on a holiday. So you got to make your women happy. And how do you make a woman happy? Give her jewelry. And how do you make your children happy? Give them candy. Right. So, that could be, on Simchat Torah, 2 days after Sukkot is over, a joyous holiday celebrating with the Torah. We have a tradition here to give out apples and candy bars. So it could be part of that same idea. How do you celebrate with good food, trinkets, something that lifts your spirits? So, yeah, so it's a little bit sexist and outdated for Rabbi Hertz, but you can apply it to everyone. How you should do something on the holiday that that you would not normally do other days to show that you're celebrating. So, with every holiday, there are certain foods that are special to the holiday. So we always had stuffed cabbage on Sukkot. And so we still have stuffed cabbage on Sukkot today. And I look forward to the stuffed cabbage on Sukkot, and that lifts my spirit. So it's the simple things. And, I don't make the stuffed cabbage, so I don't know if it's simple or not, but Lenore has told me it's easy to do. So, and she has this method of freezing the cabbage first instead of boiling the cabbage first to get the leaves soft. Freeze the cabbage, then thaw it, and then it makes it easy to roll the stuffed cabbage. Anyway, but you can email Lenore for a stuffed cabbage recipe, those watching, or the recording of this. So, so there are special foods that people look forward to on the holiday that add to the celebration of the holiday too. And with the Sukkah, with the decorations, right, you can go wild with, if you have grandchildren who are making decorations for you. You have collections. I remember growing up that we would put our Rosh Hashanah cards on the walls of the Sukkah. People don't really send mail cards anymore. They do e-cards, so it's kind of hard to do that. But I remember having chains of Rosh Hashanah cards on the walls of our Sukkah, or people making paper chains, whatever, or hanging little gourds from the schach. Whatever it is, you do these things that add to the celebration and the unique nature of the holiday of Sukkot. So, so that's the lulav, willow, myrtle, and etrog, and basukot teshvu shivat yamim. So you should dwell in the sukkah for 7 days. Now the climate where we live with global warming, it's getting more conducive. Shouldn't laugh, but where we live in the mid-Atlantic, it's not exactly comfortable to sleep in the sukkah. But in Israel, there are people who sleep in their sukkah because it says to dwell in your sukkah, you should dwell in there all the time. So whatever you would do in the house, you would do in the sukkah. And now with modern technology, Wi-Fi signals could extend into the sukkah, so you can be on your phone or your laptop in the sukkah without a problem. You should eat meals in the sukkah, absolutely, but at the same time, the rabbis understood you want to be comfortable in the sukkah. So if it just so happens that it does rain to the point where it's raining too much to be uncomfortable, then you don't have to eat in the sukkah. So you could just say Kiddush if you want in the sukkah and then come in. Another tradition with the sukkah is, besides eating and sleeping, is to welcome guests into the sukkah. Not just real life guests to add to the celebration of the meals that you're having in the sukkah, but spiritual, historical guests too. So there's an Aramaic word for this called ushpizin. So ushpizin is the Aramaic word for guests. And we're supposed to welcome in 7 guests, 1 for each night of the holiday. And to be egalitarian, it would be 7 men and 7 women. So it'd be Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebecca, Jacob and Rachel and Leah. So you got the 4 women, though I'm not sure who's the woman who matches up with Jacob on his night, on the 3rd night. But then you have, for other men, it would be Moses, Aaron, and I think King David and King Solomon. And then for the women, it would be Esther, and there'd be Hannah, who is Samuel's mother, the Haftarah for the first day of Rosh Hashanah. And I forget who the other woman is that we invite, but whatever it is, the idea of these important people in our history who are who we would want to add to the celebration. And of course, with all of these things, with inviting guests in the sukkah, it lends itself to conversation around the table about who, Washingtonian magazine has in it every month, who in Washington you'd want to have at your at a party, right? Who are the celebrities or the politicians who are important this particular month that you'd want to talk to? So more than that, who are these important historical figures in one's life that you'd want to have around your sukkah dinner table, to not just to remember loved ones who are passed away and to acknowledge their presence, but who even further back in our lives we want to. Some people in the establishment of the state of Israel, other people in Jewish history, people like that, kind of highlighting the idea that our observance of Sukkot this year isn't just a 2021 5782 celebration, but it's part of our long chain of history of Jews celebrating the holiday of Sukkot. So it's just like on Passover, we're reliving the Exodus from Egypt. On Sukkot, we relive our history too by inviting people from history to our Sukkah. The service on Sukkot is similar to other holiday services in that we add Psalms 113 to 118 to the service, known as Hallel, for the rejoicing of the service. We do the prayer for the Kohanim, the blessing of the Kohanim at the end of the service, and we also march with the lulav and the etrog around the sanctuary. So this is something to remind us that was something special to the holiday of Sukkot, that people would march around the court of the temple with their lulav and etrog on the holiday. So that it was part, I wouldn't say it was part of the sacrificial system, but it was part of the worship system, that somehow having a lulav and etrog in one's hand while reciting Hallel or another special prayer after Hallel, doing this processional, adds to the season, in that for the fall harvest, we're not just grateful for the bounty of the harvest, but we're also anxious as to what the winter rains will have in store. Will the rain come at the right time? Will there be enough rain when it comes so that there will be a bountiful harvest in the springtime? So it's both a grateful, happy time and an anxious time. So when we march with the lulav and etrog, there's a different paragraph for every 7 day, for each of the 7 days of the holiday, which reflects this a different idea of either remembering people in history and that we invoke their name, that just as God blessed them, God should bless us, or we invoke different aspects of Shabbat, because we don't do the processional on Shabbat, but we remember Shabbat, and we have a substitute one to do on Shabbat itself, or we remember things about the temple itself. So there are a whole variety of things that we're remembering as we are processing with the lulav and etrog, which correspond to what we're feeling spiritually and emotionally at this fall harvest time. So these processionals are called Hoshanot, because we say Hoshana, save us, after each phrase in the prayer. So the walking with the lulav and etrog is called a Hoshana, and so that is added to the service. The last intermediate day, so there are the two first days of the holiday. The first 2 days are Yom Tov. The last 2 are Yom Tov. So the 4 intermediate days. The fourth one, which is the 6th day of Sukkot, is called Hoshanah Rabbah, the great. Just a second here. Right. So the first 2 days, the last 2 days are Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah, so which are technically a holiday to themselves. So it's the 5th intermediate day is this day called Hoshanah Rabbah. So right, if I do the calendar, Tuesday and Wednesday are Yom Tov, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, intermediate days of the holiday. 5th intermediate day is this Hoshanah Rabbah, the great Hoshana, and then the 8th and 9th days are Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah. So the Hoshanah Rabbah, what makes Hoshanah Rabbah different from the other days of Sukkot is that we have 7 processionals with the lulav and etrog, not just one, and that the service is more reminiscent of a holiday service than it is of a weekday service. And after processing with the lulav and etrog 7 times, we do this bizarre ritual, which is kind of like tashlich, in that we take fresh willow branches, and not the willow branches from the lulav itself, but fresher willow branches, a bundle of 3 or 5 of them, and we whack the back of a chair with them as we recite a prayer to make the willow leaves fall off the branch. And as the leaves fall, it's as if this is our last chance to ask God for forgiveness for our sins. So that's why we recite that psalm for the high holiday season all the way through Hoshanah Rabbah. Psalm 27 is recited until then, which says it's a last chance. We thought that at the end of Yom Kippur, that was our last chance, but the rabbis say, no, Hoshanah Rabbah is really the last chance to ask forgiveness for our sins. So by whacking the back of a chair with these willow branches and making the leaves fall off, it's our last chance to ask God for forgiveness. And kind of as we enter this season, this time in which we're both happy and anxious, we want to do something physical that reflects this difficult time that we're in. So by whacking the branches, the leaves falling off, we're expressing our spiritual stress and hoping that God will hear our prayers and that we will receive blessings in the dark winter months. Okay, so that's the holiday of Sukkot in a nutshell with all of the traditions. Next Monday, we'll talk about Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah and how we're going to be celebrating Simchat Torah this year in a COVID-friendly way. Any questions or comments? And residual questions or comments about the holiday? Yes, Margie.
Here's my show and tell.
Oh, there you go. You got those. So how far do they date back?
Oh, to the 80s at least. But we didn't get one last year, but the most recent one, I guess, is 2019.
Do they still smell?
Well, let's see. This is 2016. And we write the dates on them. So
Yeah.
2016 till a little bit.
Okay, there you go. So
Yeah.
maybe it's some of the aroma of the newer ones are rubbing off.
The really old ones don't have any. They're just.
Okay. So it comes a time after several years that they run out of smell. But still, that's the idea. If you had an orange in there, you wouldn't want to have an orange in there or any other fruit. That's the point about the etrog, the unique way that it rots. Okay. So
are we gonna walk around with the lulav?
Yes,
and all that?
we will walk around with the lulav and etrog because the people won't be congregating in the aisle that way, and the people who have a lulav and etrog will be we can be physically distant from one another, so that'll be okay. So we will be doing that in synagogue on Sukkot.
Okay. Good.
Okay, so wish everybody a good day and a Chag Sameach, a happy and a healthy holiday, and hope to see you either in shul. Hope to see you in shul or online.
Later.
Okay, Chag Sameach.
Later.
Hoshanah Rabbah.